The previous basket is under review.
Welcome back to Stats by Will and Jim, a college basketball podcast that focuses on the numbers. We are proudly a part of Basket Under Review, the very best college basketball community going. Please check out the site and the Discord. Only $10 a month. It gets you access to all kinds of written content, to stuff by Will Warren, my co-host here on Stats by Will and Jim, to Jordan Majeski's work, Brian Ralph's Ralph Report, tons of great guest writers, the weekend watch list every single week. Really just all kinds of great stuff. You also should tune into the Basket Under Review podcast, aka The Burp, with Eamon Brennan and Tate Frazier. We got Weekend Under Review with Matthew Winnick and Brian Ralph, Scout Team with Kevin Sweeney and Eric Fawcett. It's all here under the Basket Under Review umbrella, and we are back for another episode talking the numbers that stood out to us in college basketball this week. Will, how are you feeling coming off a wild weekend of college hoops?
Pretty good. I was really proud of my family. It was in my wife's family that we live in the same city. They wanted to watch basketball over whatever other slop was on. And I think this is a big cultural victory for college hoops because I do think of them, sans Tennessee basketball, of course, as like the prototypical family of like, you know how in the summer NBC will show like their ripoff of Planet Earth or whatever on like a weekend? They'll be like, oh, we want to watch that instead of, like Sunday Night Baseball or whatever. So like a very normie family where it's like, if it's not Tennessee, they're like only half interested. But Michigan Duke was on and Houston Arizona was on. They were like, how about we just watch both? And I was like, okay, I think that we're seeing the comeback of the sport in the public's eyes, especially as we inch closer day by day to March.
Yep, exactly. I don't know what the ratings were, the TV ratings for those games. I have to imagine they were outstanding. Obviously, the rankings and just the brands of the schools, particularly Duke, Michigan, I think would get a ton of attention coming in primetime there. But yeah, we had a great weekend of basketball. We got a lot to recap here. I was on a bachelor party in Scottsdale. I am starting to feel like a human being again, so that's at least progress. But first, before we get into our stats, going back and forth on the numbers, we got to start with the stat of the day / trivia question of the day for Will. And this is something that intrigued me. It's a little bit like last week where I wasn't fully aware of it. Last week, it talked about how many teams have been ranked number one so far this season. But my question for you is, per Bart Torvik's tourney cast, with 2 weeks left in the regular season, how many teams have a better than 15% chance of earning a number one seed in the NCAA tournament?
I feel bad because I looked this up yesterday.
Oh, okay. Well,
I
hey,
am pretty
at some point that was going to happen this year.
So Michigan, Arizona, Duke are all like 95 or higher, of my memory. I think 93, something like that. Yep. Those three are locks. I believe there's either 5 or 6 additional. It's UConn, Purdue, Illinois, Houston, Iowa State, and maybe Florida.
That is correct. Over 15% in order. UConn 27%, Florida 23%, Purdue 22%, Illinois 21%, Houston 16% still, although I did pull the stat before they lost at Kansas, so I will double check in a second here. The interesting thing sort of to me was that even before yesterday, Iowa State, who was just revealed as a 1 seed by the selection committee over the weekend, was only a 9.9% chance. Now, granted, they lost after that reveal, so that sort of changes the math there. But a team that has had official designation as a 1 seed was no longer in the top 8 to potentially earn one. So the updated odds per Bart this morning, it's only down to 15.2% for Houston. Like, just I think the chance that they pick up a couple wins to end the regular season, they should get out of their funk with the remaining schedule that they've got. And then if they win the Big 12 tournament, I think it's going to be tough to say no to them as a 1 seed.
They are going to be an incredible test case of the discourse. So I don't know if you followed because you were, off having fun and, not dying in your palms like I was watching Tennessee Vanderbilt. You had a better, presumably, Saturday. The interesting thing there, I don't know if you saw this or if people listening saw this, they had the mock selection committee in Indy last Thursday, I think, last Wednesday or Thursday. So like Norlander, David Cobb, several others we know are all there. And multiple times. Warlock and others surrounding the committee. I think Dan Gavitt did too. And Seth Davis is, well, Seth Davis, that man loves hammering in a point online about how the committee takes in to factor the results of the last day or two of conference tournament weekend leading into Selection Sunday. Now, not to act all white knight high and mighty, but if I were there, I simply would have asked for an example of them doing that in the last 10 years, because I can't recall one.
Yeah, especially the Sunday games. And I get that the idea is that they make contingency brackets for those, but I haven't felt evidence of them making contingency brackets for middle of the bracket teams. Like, for instance, our one of the sports media heroes, I don't know if you saw it, Scott Van Pelt replied to Seth Davis and was like,
Yeah.
"Oh yeah, Michigan winning the Big Ten tournament really showed up in them being a 5 seed last year."
Well,
SCT
Michigan
with
winning the
shirt.
Big Ten tournament when they had the plane crash, they were still a 7 seed.
Yep, and ended up making the Sweet 16 that year. Last year they pushed Auburn. Not that like performance in the tournament justifies seeding or whatever, but I think the Texas A&M run to the SEC tournament final was always one that felt like didn't quite get fully factored into the selection process. And yeah, as someone that's done a lot of bracketology over the years, probably for I'm pushing 20 years at this point, I don't remember a lot of Sunday instances where it's factored in. Saturday is even tough, but I just can't imagine they're making a whole bunch of different contingency brackets because it is so hard to bracket out the field with all the rules of can't overlap conferences, especially with no Pac-12 anymore. And something like you got to avoid rematches, and the geography rules pretty much tell you exactly where teams have to go. So it's tricky to put those together, and I just have a hard time believing they have like 5 contingency brackets based on all the different Sunday results that could happen.
I do hope that as wins above bubble continues to increase in importance, and they made a huge stance about that for the selection committee on Thursday, saying, WAB is more or less the factor. They didn't put it exactly like that, but I'm in my head, if I'm seeing like all the different things you can see in a team sheet, they're indicating that WAB is like 70% of the process for selection, which I think would be, I'd almost like to see that higher, but that's a really great step in the right direction for an objective seeding of the field. So I would think as WAB increases in importance, you will see a higher chance of those Saturday, Sunday results maybe mattering a little more.
Let's hope
Because,
so.
yeah, I think because otherwise you are essentially turning Saturday and Sunday into a lot of exhibition games. It's kind of it's like it is almost like Week 18 NFL, where teams have mostly secured their spot in the seeding order, and they're just like, oh, it's time for Max Brosmer to run out at quarterback this week. We need what was the Packers guy, Matt Flynn, who got like a giant deal off of one game?
Yep, where he had 7 touchdowns against the Lions. Oh yeah.
Yeah, so it's like you're encouraging teams to have a Matt Flynn moment right now, and I think we should discourage that.
Remove that incentive. Yeah, as somebody who watched Clayton Tune play a Week 18 game this year for the Packers, I do not enjoy that particular brand of late season sports. Okay, let's get into the meat and potatoes of the pod. We'll go back and forth with our 7 numbers. I know Will and I both overachieved and kind of have almost 8 this time, but we're going to cut it down as we go. Perhaps there'll be some crossover. We won't have to double up on teams. But I first want to give a shout out to Home Field Apparel, which is the best place to get your college sports gear. Buy it now before March Madness, and you should check out their Best of Basketball collection. It's featured on their site. They've got coaching jackets. They've got shooting shirts. They just came out with VCU and UMBC collections. So if you want to relive the Retrievers' glory days of the first 16 seed over number 1, go ahead and buy some UMBC gear. They've got dynamite retro looks. You're going to look like the diehard of all diehards wearing this stuff. So make sure you check it out, whether it's t-shirts, hoodies, sweaters, jackets, hats, joggers, whatever it is you're looking for. Get to homefieldapparel.com. Use promo code BURNER15 for 15% off your first purchase. That is BURNER15, homefieldapparel.com. Wear one for the team. All right. To you, Will, we go for the first number in our little 7-stat rotation.
This one, we're going to go straight to the biggest game of the weekend, minus 17.2 and minus 9. The first number is the per 100 rebounding margin for Michigan against Duke. The second is the combined rebound turnover margin in this game, -9. Both of those, their worst results of the season. This was not a game where Michigan shot particularly well. I think Elliot Cadeau had a really poor shooting day. They were a little overdue for one, so I'm not going to, wave my hands at that just yet. And I will say, despite this, adjusted for competition, Torvik credits them with 122 points per 100 possessions. Part of that is because it was a very slow game, 62 possessions. But Michigan did take care of the ball, a very small number of turnovers here, got to the line pretty well, missed a few free throws, but this is a type of game and a type of loss for Michigan where you can point out and just be like, that's fine. There's no penalty in losing to Duke at a neutral. Like, you could have definitely played a little better, but I thought Michigan played pretty well. And sometimes you're just not good enough on a certain day, and that's okay. But there are a couple of aspects of this game that did concern me. And the biggest is the rebounding. So Michigan -5 on offensive rebounds, and I believe -13 overall in rebounding margin. That's pretty shocking given the Michigan we've seen so far this year. And it's starting to take me back a little bit to like November and early January Michigan, where we saw those wobbles. So they got, I think, either out rebounded or equaled in rebounding by Wake Forest in that overtime victory. Struggled pretty mightily to keep, of all teams, Washington off the boards. Really struggled with Oregon on the boards as well. They do have some leakiness in defensive rebounding. And while this is a little bit of like looking at small cracks in the armor on an otherwise really strong soldier, this does concern me a little bit because there's the path you can envision. Because this is not a defense that forces a ton of turnovers and does have some turnover issues themselves just by way of lineup structure. If they do get beaten on the boards, and I can't say I would see this happening at the very earliest, the Sweet 16, that could be the downfall.
All I heard there was propaganda for Hannes Steinbach. If Washington can out rebound that, no, of course I heard more than that. Not to discredit the point. Yeah, it's shocking. Duke grabbed 40% of their misses and 78% of the misses on the other end of the floor, to put it in percentage perspective. And yeah, to completely out rebound Michigan like that, I thought was really shocking. And I'd seen, I think I sort of said it on the 3-Man Weave pod, and somebody had tweeted about like, if Michigan's going to lose, it's probably going to be a bad Elliot Cadeau game, turnovers, and the fact that they didn't turn it over. And yes, Cadeau didn't shoot that well, but he had 6 assists and 1 turnover. He only took 8 shots in 29 minutes. It's not like he was firing up some bad jumpers, and that was what's completely derailing their offense. For Duke to win the way they did, I thought was super impressive and surprising to me. I know they have some size in the paint with Gungba, with obviously Cameron Boozer, but to out rebound Michigan like that, to match them in 2-point percentage, and to not really even need a big 3-point shooting game to beat Duke or to beat Michigan, that really shocked me. I just thought that's kind of the route to beat Michigan, was you outshoot them from 3. And I mean, looking back at some of the games like Michigan, I think Eamon Brennan said it on the burp. I just listened to the burp, so it's really fresh on my mind this morning. But just that Michigan hasn't needed to shoot well from 3 to win games. It's more been like the swing factor of how much they win by. And so for them to, have to really have relied on shooting to get by Duke, I think is telling. That especially like they looked so immortal coming off that Purdue domination where they were up by double digits most of the game. I'm happy about it because I don't want the NCAA tournament to feel like an inevitable march to the crowning of Michigan. And it's definitely not going to be after watching this game.
No, I thought it was I think Norlander pointed this out, a great result for college basketball for that to happen. Duke, I don't think we've covered, just because there are several elite rebounding teams this year, just how good Duke is at rebounding. I mean, they are plus 11.6 per 100 on the season. Top 20 in both offensive and defensive rebound rate. Only been out rebounded 4 times all year. And 2 of those were Texas Tech and Florida. I think those are fine. Like, you can accept getting got by them. They even out rebounded Michigan State, which is pretty crazy. But to do this against Michigan in the way they did, really highlights 2 things for me. I think Duke is on this tier of like true title favorites, where it's like, I think everybody's kind of coalesced around Michigan, Arizona, and Duke as the top 3. And I do think Duke belongs. We've kind of had some questions about like, is this really them being elite, or is this, kind of playing in a definite weaker conference than those two? But I do think that they're on that level, and I'm starting to believe in them more than I was before. Especially, I think defensively, they just seem so stout.
Yep, they're outstanding. They're so long at every single position. Number 2 nationally in average height. I think that's helped the rebounding. I think all season I've thought of Arizona, Florida, Michigan State as like this top tier of the rebounding teams. And Duke has stepped up into that ranking. Michigan is very close to it, but they just obviously got out rebounded by Duke. And I'm curious to see down the stretch. Michigan's got Illinois and Michigan State, two also huge teams that can really work you on the glass, particularly the Spartans. I know Michigan's already beaten Michigan State once, but I want to see what happens in the glass battle there, because I think Duke not exposed them, but at least drew a path to how you can potentially beat them in a game where you don't have to shoot that well.
Yeah,
All right.
I think that
Oh, go ahead.
Michigan's going to be fine. We'll just note right here that people love to freak out and be reactionary after one loss. They're still obviously one of the 3 best teams in the sport.
Yeah, very much so. They're ahead of the Big Ten pack by 3 games, and part of the reason for that is because Illinois just lost to UCLA, and that's my first thought here. UCLA's transition efficiency this year per synergy is in the 87th percentile, and I wanted to call that out because obviously they won the game on a somewhat transition possession with Donovan Dent going Tyus Edney coast to coast, getting the huge bucket there. But they're only in the 22nd percentile in transition rate and frequency. And it just kind of goes back. I think a lot of people circled this fit with Donovan Dent with Mick Cronin and thought, this doesn't really make sense. This is one of the fastest players in the sport. Cronin typically slows his teams down, doesn't really let his thoroughbreds get out and run. And it's a little bit frustrating for me to see how effective they can be in transition, and he's not letting them quite do that. And for a guy that's made a lot of name of himself recently with his own press conferences going at other people, I do think there should be a little bit of a look in the mirror for Cronin, because yes, they're good in the half court as well. 86 percentile efficiency per synergy there. But those possessions are just inherently less valuable than transition. And if you've got a star sprinter like Donovan Dent, I think you let him go, let him create in that vicinity. And it's just imploring Mick Cronin to take the restrictor plates off of his offense a little bit down the stretch.
Can you name the president and term the last year a Mick Cronin team ranked in the top 200 of pace?
Oh boy, I would almost estimate it hadn't happened, but you're at least implying that maybe at some point it did. Was he at Murray State or something?
First term Bush.
Oh man,
Murray State, 2004. That is the one and only time, and as his first season in his entire head coaching career, he's been in the top 200 of pace, whether overall or offensive. Look, I don't want to be the next guy to get yelled at by Mick Cronin. He's for being a bald short guy, he's pretty threatening. It would be like if Gary Parrish got really mad at you, and I don't really want Gary Parrish mad at me.
no,
I think those Memphis Bones could really whoop me, I think, in a fight. I guess we'll find out at the Final Four. But Mick, I just like to see a little more openness in the offense. I do think the way that Illinois played that game did allow for UCLA to push it a little more, especially it does hammer home a question I've got about Illinois of like, defensively, is this good enough for March? Because I was not really impressed with what I've seen, and in other games, like what I've seen in general. But I do think, that all being said, this UCLA team, there's still something there. They're never going to be what they were at KenPom prior to the season, which was a top 15 team. I think the AP poll, they were top 15 or top 20 to start the year.
Well, we don't need to mention what they were in the 3-man weave top 100. I think they were like 8th, so we can shove that under the rug.
Well, if we can also shove where I ranked Nebraska in the Big Ten under the rug, that'd be good too. Yeah. But a lot of me does wish UCLA just took better shots offensively. They remain obsessed with mid-range jumpers and don't really hit them at a high enough rate to justify it. But that is sort of the, not really danger, but the deal you make with rostering Donovan Dent and some of these other dudes. I want to see them continue to open it up a little more. How much I trust them in March really greatly depends on what opponent they draw. because the talent to me is here for a Sweet 16 run. I don't think it's outlandish at all to look at this roster, look at the head coach, who I think we would still agree is a very good coach, and think like, yeah, this UCLA team can make the Sweet 16 if they get the right draw.
Yeah,
But it's going to depend.
Yep, talent is there. You reminded me of just thinking back on Mick Cronin history. It was 2018 Cincinnati. So going into the year, Cronin talked about like, we are going to play faster. He had a really talented roster: Jacob Evans, Jaron Cumberland, Gary Clark, Kyle Washington, like a pretty good squad. First game of the year, they play Savannah State, who's playing like Tiger tempo before they went down to Division II. 92 possessions. Next game, 77, then 72, then 76. It was like, oh my God, Mick Cronin's going to play fast. And then by the start of AAC play, they've got a 58 possession game, 56, 57. Like, he just can't help but micromanage. There's and some of that shot selection stuff too is a little bit like Kelvin Sampson, where these coaches that cultivate such a tough identity defensively, it's like they don't focus enough on offense and they end up living in the mid-range and they're just trying to win with the offensive glass. And UCLA doesn't really have that identity, especially on the offensive boards this year. So I agree with you. Hugely matchup dependent come March.
I did love the tweet, I think from a subscriber of ours, the Blue Demon Degenerate, who said I forgot what it was. It was like the only two career paths that he could have chosen that he would have survived in was like college basketball coach and it's like construction manager or something. So I'm happy he succeeded in life.
He did pick one of the two. That's good. All right. So to you for your second stat.
All right. This is the stat of the year for me, to be honest, because it's so astonishing. This was from Matt Norlander via CBS Sports Research. Arizona did not make more than 3 threes against Houston in their win on Saturday. Teams over the last 3 years against top 3 competition, last 5 years against top 3 competition, win-loss record in games with 3 or fewer made threes, not involving Arizona, 2-72. Involving this year's Arizona team, 3-0.
That's absurd.
It's absurd, and they have cracked the code in a way that I have not seen probably since like 38-1 Kentucky, to just simply win without shooting threes. And even then, that Kentucky team, I believe, shot more than this Arizona team did. This is an interesting way to live. To win at Houston in any instance is amazing, but to win without Coach Pete, I thought was really special. Arizona did hit a few more mid-range twos than I thought they should have. Houston hit a few fewer, and obviously Houston had an interesting performance against Kansas on Monday that we may touch on. But with Arizona, 3 of 12 from 3 in this one, it's both admirable and continues to hammer in my question about them in March. Is this actually sustainable? Because when I look at those stats and I see 2-72, on one hand, it is amazing that Arizona is still winning these games. It's because they dominate on the boards. They get to the line way more than their opponents. They're elite at rim protection, all of that. But to win these games over and over is a bit like playing roulette and just saying, I'm going to put it all in 15 and winning 3 times in a row. Are you willing to bet that it hits 15 a 4th time? Or do you feel like you're just running a little hot in the perfect timing?
I think it's going to depend on path a little bit for them. Like, I don't see them, because of their rim dominance and interior dominance, I don't see them being remotely prone to an upset. Like, really, the first 2 rounds for sure. Even it's going to take a heck of a performance from a 4 or a 5 seed in the Sweet 16 to beat them. But then, yeah, can they beat a 2 seed, a 1 seed, and a 1 seed to win the title or something without being able to knock down shots? And perhaps they'll get a bit better of an effort from deep if they get Dwayne Aristode back, but I'm not sure. It's undisclosed what he's out with now. And I will say credit to them for winning at Houston while getting 17 combined minutes from Sidney Gay and Evan Nelson. I did not know that they would dig that deep into the bench, but they sort of had to because of foul trouble to Krivas and Owaka. But yeah, they've got to keep forcing that long 2-shot diet. Houston was in the 2nd percentile in 2-point attempt distance, and that's kind of been the story with them and can certainly be translated to what happened in Lawrence on Monday night. But yeah, Arizona, just the way they win with the size, force teams to beat them with tough jumpers and really get to, like you say, get to the free throw line a ton. I kind of buy it as sustainable, but I don't know. Would you take them, Arizona, or Duke right now if you had to rank that tier?
If I had to rank them, I think
The
I'd
Michigan or Duke,
go.
excuse me. Sorry.
I would probably go almost in that exact order. Duke, Michigan, Arizona is a trust thing, and it is like the margins are so thin that I'm almost just picking who's got the best player of these three. But I agree with you. I think it is going to require a perfect game especially with this year's field, from a round of 32 opponent to beat any of those three. But I did look it up at TourneyCast really quick, and statistically speaking, there is a 75% chance one of those three is not in the Elite Eight.
Wow. Okay. That
So,
would
like,
surprise me.
the
Yeah.
odds of all three getting in, and I'm even increasing their odds here. Oh, sorry, actually 77% that one of those three doesn't make it. Of the three, I do think Arizona's most vulnerable to a great night from like a 4 or 5 seed. It's all going to be so matchup dependent that we just don't know ahead of time. But like, you look at this year's crop of 4 and 5s, and they're nothing to sneeze at. Like, Tennessee looks really good right now. I'm not out on Vanderbilt by any means. Michigan State, if they end up a 4, really intriguing. So you got a lot of options there, and I do kind of wonder if we're going to have a surprise at some point in this term. I don't think we're going to have 2 in a row where all 4 ones make it. I
Yep.
don't know if people want that anyway. So I don't know. I do believe that it's sustainable for at least 2 rounds and maybe 3. I do feel though at some point you have to make threes and jumpers in general to win a title.
I would support that with this stat. I just pulled up the Bart Torvik's similar efficiency profiles, not similar resume, so similar efficiency profile. And of the teams most similar to Arizona, none of them have won a title. But you've got 2008 Memphis made the finals, 2017 Gonzaga made the finals, 2017 Kentucky Elite Eight, 2024 Arizona Sweet 16, 2020 Duke no tournament. You've got a lot of Elite Eights, Final Fours with 2019 Duke, 2012 Ohio State, 2010 Kentucky, 2015 Arizona, but not a single title winner. And that's despite being like way up there in efficiency overall. So perhaps they do need a little bit more shooting if they want to get all the way over the hump.
Mm-hmm. And again, at this point of the season, we are kind of nitpicking, especially with these 3 elites. Like, we're looking for any reason to fade or, perhaps see like why they wouldn't win a title. Because as much as we would like to be like, oh, it's only these 3, if you add up their odds at Torvik, there's just a collective, I think, 40% chance that one of those 3 win the title. So, as insane as that sounds, it is slightly more likely than not that somebody else will do it. But if you had to pick right now, you'd probably pick one of those 3. We're just looking for the areas where they may not pull it off.
Yep, exactly. And because all 4 or 3 of them played amongst each other, plus Houston over the weekend, we've got a lot of takeaways specific to those teams at this point.
Yeah.
All right, my second thought here is the number is 9. And so my next 2 are going to be kind of overarching season thoughts, not quite team specific, but this is the number of top 10 conferences that are already over 75%, actually over 80% for their outright winner and their 1 seed in the conference race as per CBB Analytics. It feels really high with 2 weeks to go, like that we don't have a ton of like who's going to win the race type of conferences. It's basically the Big East. Will St. John's or UConn win? And we might have that definitive answer on Wednesday night when those 2 meet in Hartford. But like the Missouri Valley is already clinched by Belmont. SLU's got a 99% chance to win the A10. South Florida's 96% to win the American. Michigan's 95% to win the Big Ten. Gonzaga's 95% to win the WCC. Florida, almost 90% to win the SEC. Duke, 85% to win the ACC. Utah State, 80% to win the Mountain West. And before Houston lost at Kansas, Arizona was 78.5%. I'll double check that number as Will responds, but that's going to be over 80% now that Houston has also lost, picked up a 4th loss in league play. So I'm a little bummed out that we don't have a lot of conference race drama coming down the end of the stretch of the season here.
Conference races, I understand why people do or don't care about them, but for me, they matter a lot just because it's something to keep track of and something to watch, especially before, quote unquote, the casuals descend upon the sport here in the next, Well, I'm going to just say, like, just spitballing here, 5 days. I think the casuals will be on here. 4 by the time you hear this. I wonder what that might indicate. Yeah, because February 29th doesn't exist this year. But yeah, I really wish that there was a like a high major conference with a great conference race. And there is like an outside shot that the ACC becomes interesting if Virginia pulls off a shocker at Duke, I think this coming weekend,
Yep,
right? Something
Saturday.
like that.
Yep.
And like if St. John's beats UConn, which I don't think will happen, but could for sure, that would upset the apple cart there and make that race really interesting. But to like find a really good conference race, you have to dig pretty deep this year. I do think that people should be tracking the Sun Belt's insanity, where I don't think last time I checked, and I will do that right now as I'm speaking. Yeah, so there are 7 teams within a game and a half of first.
It's crazy. And especially with their conference tournament format, where it's like
Yeah.
the mega ladder, like the seeding matters so much there, and the
Mhm.
margins for the seeding are tiny. I think Stuckey from Action Network tweeted that Texas State versus Appalachian State, if App State wins, they'll be the 2 and have to win 2 games. If they lose, they'll be the 7 and have to win 5.
Yeah.
That's one game has that much leverage.
So like if you want a great conference race, you got to dig deep, but like they do still exist. It is just a shame that it's not happening at the top end of the sport. And especially now the Mountain West can get really interesting this week if Utah State loses the day you're hearing this to San Diego State. That could make that race really intriguing, especially if New Mexico wins at Nevada the day we're recording this. That would create a 3-way tie at 13-4, which would make for a pretty fun finish. But even so, that does come with the qualification that after San Diego State, Utah State schedule lightens up pretty well, and the other two have pretty difficult finishes to the year. So I wish we had like a marquee race. It was really fun the years where it's like, oh, Duke UNC is going to decide the ACC title this season. Or the final day of like SEC basketball is going to determine who finishes first and who finishes fourth. That can still happen. It's just that the odds are so slim that the thing you're looking for on the final day of the season, for example, in the SEC is like who gets like the final double bye. And that's a harder sell than being like, oh, who's going to win the conference?
Yep. Yeah, you need a couple surprising upsets, like if Arkansas were to win at Florida, suddenly the SEC gets really interesting. As you mentioned, Virginia Duke. If Arizona were to drop one shockingly to Baylor tonight, then Kansas and Iowa State are really in the chase there, especially because they both got a head-to-head shot at Arizona as well. But yeah, it's not quite the like 3 teams tied for first that might be more fun. So I just wanted to lament that, but hopefully we'll still get some drama down the stretch. All right, number 3 for you, Will.
Well, I'm going to jump around a bit here. This one I had later, but I do want to bring it up because we did indirectly mention this team. Do you know the only high major team undefeated over its last 10 games?
I think I do because I looked it up. So this is St. John's, correct?
St. John's. Do you know what they rank at Torvik during that span?
Ooh, that's a good one. I'll say, because the Big East isn't all that good and they haven't been convincing, 22nd.
Oh, I wish. 14th.
Okay.
But still, I do think that this is important to bring up. So St. John's is making the Big East race really interesting. Second, Gary Parrish mentioned this pod. They're making that man look a lot better now than he did 2 months ago. That poor guy. I just got off the phone with him. He's pulling all of his St. John's Red Storm vintage gear out of the fire and trying to dust it off and wear it now. So I don't know if it's been burned for 2 months, if you can reverse that. I guess we'll see. But I'm struggling with this team. During this span, 57th in offensive efficiency. Now, this comes with the 10th ranked defense, but we are almost to a T seeing a regeneration of last year's team in their recent form, where it's bad offense but great defense, which is not what they were the first 2 months. And so I'm struggling with them. I don't know if they're rounding into form as a Final Four contender or if they are simply escaping in a lot of close games where like their true record, quote unquote, should be like 8-2. I don't feel that it's a great sign to be outranked by 3 different 6-4 teams during the span: Houston, Purdue, and Nebraska. So I'm curious for your thoughts on St. John's. Are you becoming more of a believer, or do you still have these outlying questions?
I'm not quite Neo or Morpheus, like he's beginning to believe. I'm not quite there to reference the Matrix, but I want to believe because this was a team that I bet a national title future on when I saw Zuby was coming back and they had an open roster. It's like I trust Rick Pitino to fill it in. And it wasn't quite as pretty and cohesive as I wanted it to be. I mean, they've got like the shot volume stuff on lock. They've been fantastic with that. They in over 27 games, they've got 214 a plus 214 margin on rebounds and turnovers per CBB analytics. So they are getting way more shooting possessions than their opponents. It's just the problem of like, does the shooting measure up? Are their guards going to give them good enough performances? Like when Dylan Darling plays really well or Ian Jackson plays well, the team looks unbeatable. But otherwise, it's too reliant on bludgeoning the offensive glass and being tough defensively with that big lineup of Mitchell, Ejiofor, and Hopkins all on the court together. I still think they're going to have a little bit of a limited ceiling in March, which bums me out. Like I said, I want them to go far because my wallet would appreciate it, but it does not amp me up as a team. I think both the teams out of the Big East that haven't seen as much competition is going to be frustrating come March.
Yeah, I want to get there with them. I think it'd be a fun kind of value bet at this point because I'm still seeing them as like a 4 or 5 seed in pretty much every bracket. And if they are going to be a legitimate top 12 team, even that does give you some plus value in some bracket pulls. But I just can't buy it yet. The offense isn't there. And while this is a great reclamation project of a season that was maybe not dead in the water 2 months ago, but was some form of life support, I don't know. I guess I would just like to see more from my supposed Final Four contender than 22nd Ken Palm, 45th offense, 15th defense. Like, I guess I'm just like saying it's not a great sign that since conference play began, you're 15-1, and all that it's done for you is drop you 3 spots on Ken Palm.
That's fairly damning. Yeah, they've got filtering for conference only. They've got the best defense and the second best offense in that league, but who's contending for that besides UConn? Like it really has not been a challenging league, and they've survived some tests, but it's become a little hairy to the point that it wouldn't be surprised if they have a tough second round or first round matchup the way they did last year against an athletic Arkansas team.
I would like to lock in right now. I saw this pod. Do you follow Bowertology? Are you aware of that guy on Twitter? Okay, yeah,
Yep.
cool dude. He posted his updated one yesterday with a pod, I think in Portland or San Diego, one of those two. And it was 4 seed Tennessee, 13 seed UNC Wilmington, 5 seed St. John's, 12 seed Yale. Lock of the lifetime. That would be the opening 12-15, 245 block of the NCAA tournament.
Oh, there we go. Yes.
That is the perfect, like, roll out of proverbial bed, turn it on. It's like, St. John's Yale, 7 minutes in, score of 10-7.
Yes.
That's what I want.
I've watched it so many consecutive years in Vegas that hearing 12-15 sounds painful. I like the 9-15 tip.
9-15 rolling out of the pool.
Yeah,
sunburned
exactly.
already.
Yeah. Okay, my third number is 4. Like I said, kind of an overarching thing. This is number of first-year coaches that are currently winning their conferences. So I wanted to tip my cap to them. South Florida, Brian Hodgson, they're atop the American right now, looking very strong to win that league. Stephen F. Austin, despite a bad loss at home on Monday night, Matt Brower's got them atop the Southland, which I think is impressive considering the talent that McNeese had assembled there. A shocking one for me, Will. Nolan Smith and Tennessee State are tied atop the OVC. I saw at least one Duke fan say, like, oh, what if we get Nolan Smith versus Duke in the first round, 1 versus 16 seed? Sign me all the way up for those storylines. Committee, make it happen if they win the OVC tournament. And then another team that I think we've mentioned once or twice in the pod this year, but probably warrants more, is Navy, dominating the Patriot. They have the best against the spread record of any team in conference play so far this year. And I would love to see them get to the tournament. It's surprising that it's John Perry's first year rather than the amount of very good but not elite years that Ed DeChellis had there in Annapolis.
I wonder if this is an indication that athletic directors and or conferences generally are getting better at hiring with that, like, because I do feel that there was a period 10 to 15 years ago where maybe not exactly, but like a Tennessee State, and I know that this is the type of hire, but like they probably would have, like they've hired Eddie George in football before. Like they probably would have just hired like, somebody of that ilk, like a former NBA guy to do this instead of like, and my thoughts about Nolan Smith notwithstanding as a, person and perhaps co-worker of his former coaches, he's doing a great job. And I see that. I see the Stephen F. Austin hire with Brower. These hires are seemingly more creative, and I think that creativity is being rewarded. Now, the Navy one, maybe not so much. I think John Perry was an assistant for Ed
Yep.
DeChellis.
Internal promotion. Yep.
But even so, like that's still good because Ed DeChellis had done a good job there over the past few years and had gotten Navy further than they'd been in a long time. I'm interested to see like how much this continues to develop, like what ADs hunt for, what lessons from this may be for this coming cycle, because even beyond the teams we're going to get to that have made big hires, like a Virginia, or like teams that could be making hires soon, like a Providence perhaps, or somebody else like a Penn State. I'm struggling with teams beyond P. You'll have to help me out. Maybe a Mizzou. We don't know. But or like maybe a surprise retirement or whatever. But the point being, I'm wondering if we're going to see like what lessons are taken from these, because of these, I think all 4 were previous assistants.
I believe so. Yes. Yep.
Do we see assistant hires make a comeback? Because we've seen the newest trend has been D2 hires, which I think is great for the sport. Having D2, knowledge transfer come up, because that level of hoops has way better coaching than people realize. Do we see like the assistant on a great staff? Is that the next move?
Yeah, and obviously these have had a lot of success. There's a couple, maybe more than a couple of second-year coaches that are winning their leagues too. Dusty May at Michigan, big example there. Josh Schertz at St. Louis also. It's just going to reward you to make a savvy hire. And then really this is just like a tip of the cap to these coaches for what they've done. Clint Sargent, Wright State, he's ahead 2 games in his second season. He was an internal promotion after Scott Nagy. So there's never going to be a one size fits all. Like this is the best hire for every school, but I do think it behooves schools to be creative, like find the assistant or the D2 coach. I haven't been a huge fan of the find some random pro guy to come in. At least the ones that are getting hired, like Luke Laux, are like respected as basketball minds, not just like the Juwan Howard or Chris Mullen, Patrick Ewing, like just hire a guy because of the name. I'm glad to see that it's basketball knowledge has been more prioritized, but yeah, respect to these schools for potential. Obviously they got to win the tournament, but Navy would be in the NCAA tournament for the first time since 1998 for the midshipmen.
So that'd be a really cool story. Like as much as I've enjoyed the Colgate run, they've never won a tournament game and they've had like 6 shots at it. I wouldn't mind giving Navy a turn.
Yeah, super veteran team. I think it'd be a good one to watch. All right, back to you for thought number 4.
I've got a book on my desk I'm going to hold up for the camera. This is called The Advanced Genius Theory. This is a great book, big Chuck Klosterman fave, if you will. The theory being that, sometimes people will do things in life that seem insane. Bob Dylan becoming a Christian for 2 years, Lou Reed's entire 1970s and 1980s. And instead of just being stupid, they were simply ahead of their time, perhaps. How about, since Jizzle James was reinstated as a move of desperation that looked insanely stupid at the time, Cincinnati, 27th at Torvik. 27th.
It's wild. I think 23rd since January 1st. That's another burp shout out. That's what even Brennan said. So I'm reciting him.
Now, this is not to say that their offense has been fixed. It is 85th in that span of time. It is still quite bad for a high major offense. But considering before that it was in the 200s, it's gone from offensively awful to just merely bad, which is a massive step in the right direction. And carrying with that their top 10 defense during that span of time, demolished Kansas at Allen Fieldhouse on Saturday, have picked off some really nice wins this year quietly. Home Iowa State, They, like there's some. I'm not saying by any stretch that they're about to become this at-large candidate, but they have a path, and it starts with beating Texas Tech tonight as we're recording this. If they can do that, I think I'm going to start to believe. But even so, favored in 3 of their final 4 games, that put them at 18-13 overall, 10-8 in the Big 12. Projected WAB would be 59th, so I don't think that they'd be totally in it, but every other metric would be in the low 40s.
Yeah,
So I don't know. I can't quit them. I want to. And I gave them up in the damn season-long team draft for Wyoming like an idiot.
oh man, yeah, that's not working out terribly well. But their advanced, like the predictive metrics, quality metrics, if you're going by what they're called on the NCAA team sheet, have been fantastic for a while now. And now some of the resume stuff starting to catch up. To your point, I write the bubble watch for the Athletic, and I'm trying to debate what category to put Cincinnati in because they're still behind Arizona State, West Virginia, and Oklahoma State in WAB in the Big 12. And so, like, can I really push them up into realistic at-large territory? Probably not at this point. 65th in WAB's not good enough. But man, they're playing very well, and if they can sweep the Final Four games and make the Big 12 semis, then suddenly I think there's a real possibility they're able to crack the field. Now, would you keep Wes Miller after that, the advanced genius?
I think you'd have to if he makes. I think if he gets to 20 wins, you have to keep him because
Yeah.
as absurd as this sounds, and and maybe this is a good stance for coaches being emotional in public. He had a true crash out after a couple of games this year. A real like emotional shutdown moment, and they're winning. Could the path forward be crying?
We should. Every coach needs to bring a couple more tears to the presser. I'm with you.
I think it'd be great. So but I'm trying to figure out what. So if Mick Cronin started weeping at a press conference, I think I'd be extremely alarmed and would be worried about his health. But
Same.
if
That's too vulnerable for him.
but I'm scanning the 41st through 50th here. If we had Sean Miller come to a presser and tear up, I don't think that would be that outlandish.
You're just keeping it in the Miller family, not the actual family, but another Miller here.
Now, Mike White tearing up, I think that would make sense to me. That wouldn't be that outlandish.
Yep. Mark Pope had some dramatic pressers early in the year. That wouldn't surprise me if he teared up. It's possible, man. It's possible.
But, advanced genius Wes Miller, we might have a case study on our hands here. And it's going to require some magic down the stretch. Don't get me wrong. Like, the odds are greater that they just split these Final Four, and this ends up being kind of a fun talking point for a week. But I don't know. Like, Baba Miller's breaking out. The whole team looks a lot better. It's possible.
Yep. Cincinnati fans are getting a little spring to their step again suddenly based on winning at Allen Fieldhouse by 20, and that would earn you that reputation. All right, I'm going to pivot to my next thought here. Number 4, the number is 134.6, and that is Arkansas's offensive rating when Darius Acuff, Malik Thomas, and Malik Ewan share the floor. It's the 100th percentile for a combination for CBB Analytics. It's 327 minutes. This is a very large sample size at this point. It's kind of the perfect combination of elite shot making and shot creation from Acuff and Thomas, never turning it over. And then Ewan gives them some offensive rebounding, a smart ball mover in the front court, maybe not like the hub that we thought there was a chance he could be in the offseason. He had a lot higher assist rate at Florida State, but he just does the right things to fit with Acuff and Thomas. They're the 3 highest used players. I think the fact that they now have the number 1 offense in the SEC, they're number 4 in the entire country. We saw what Acuff did against Alabama last week after we recorded with his 50-minute, 49-point performance. The offense is real, and it's kind of wild to see Calipari do it this way without elite offensive rebounding. That's always been the trademark of his best offensive teams. And this one, kind of like his final Kentucky team that went down to Jack Golke, is much more perimeter-based, skill-based, and has found a way to do it playing very up-tempo.
I was about to bring them up because this kind of feels like the same team to me, where when they lose, it's going to be because they can't defend. But they do score explosively. They are very fun to watch. They played what I'm, rewatch depending because maybe I just missed some officiating quirks. What I'm calling the game of the year last Wednesday, Alabama, Arkansas, 117 to 115 double overtime. Truly perfect slot basketball for me. I've made a lot of jokes about SEC slop this year, but the lack of elite physicality, though it's getting better, I would say, is creating some really fun games. This Arkansas team's probably the most fun in the league. I do really enjoy watching Acuff. It's not my job to say like if he's going to translate to the NBA or not. Who cares? He's fun in college. The top three you mentioned, really great altogether. And let's give a shout out to Billy Richmond. Fantastic in the Mizzou game on Saturday, in a spot where I frankly didn't expect it from him, and I'm not sure many people have expected it from him this year. But his last three games, 21, 20, and 25 points. As he continues to emerge, the Arkansas offense gets better and better. And I am not going to hazard a guess as to what they're capable of in March. Their status as the most enigmatic team in the sport is probably well earned. I do think anything from 0 to 4 wins is plausible. But that makes them extremely watchable.
Exactly. The watchability factor is extremely high. I think Acuff has kind of captured a lot of people as just arguably one of the most watchable stars in the entire country, up there with Devonta and Boozer. And that has been surprising to me because I haven't always thought of Calipari ball as pretty. And I think he hired, it was an assistant named John Welch that pumped up the perimeter offense when he was at Kentucky that final year with Reed Shepherd and Antonio Reeves and Dillingham. And he's not there anymore. This is now a Kenny Payne assisted team instead of John Welch, but they remain extremely fun. They're number one in the country in turnover rate. And that's part of why that Alabama game was so much fun. Both teams hit over 1.3 points per possession per KenPom because there are only 19 combined turnovers. It was a lot of great shooting, a lot of quality shots gotten, and I agree with you. Kind of game of the season, poor Arkansas had to play two guys that never, ever, ever see the floor. I think they were sub 20 minutes in the entire season. They were on the court in the final minute of that game because they had 4 players foul out. And that's been a little bit of the risk with Calipari continuing to build only like 7 to 8 player rosters that are even playable in the SEC. So there is injury risk. But yeah, to your point, Richmond has been awesome all through SEC play, and that just pairs even better with the shot making of Acuff and Thomas.
Quick stat for you that I'm looking up on my tournament sheet here. Teams with a top 5 offense and a defense outside of the top 50 seeded 7th or higher. So this is mostly just eliminating some outliers like 2022, 2023 Iowa. There are 9 of them since COVID. I'm going to read you the win totals of these teams.
In the NCAA
tournament?
tournament?
They're very humorous. Yeah, this is the NCAA tournament. And I'll name them really quick. So 2021 Ohio State, 22 Purdue, 22 Iowa, 23 Baylor, 23 Gonzaga, 24 Illinois, Kentucky, Bama, 25 Mizzou. In order of their wins, 0-2-0-0-1-3-3-0-4-0.
Okay, we're erratic. We've got high variance.
You have in this list everything from teams that lost to 14 and 15 seeds to a team that made the Final Four. And I do believe that sums up the Arkansas experience better than anything.
I think I remember before that Bama team made the Final Four that it was like no team with this good of an offense and this bad of a defense ever makes the Final Four. And they were able to break the mold. But I think that is much more the exception than the rule for that kind of a team.
Yeah, actually, I'm forgetting here. We have 2 teams that lost to a 15. Purdue lost to St. Peter's.
Oh, and if you, I know this isn't probably within your sample size there, but I can tell you very confidently that 2012 Missouri was also a top 5 offense, really bad defense that lost to a 15 seed. So yeah, the evidence goes even further back.
Yeah. Now, the good thing is like if you like go out further, you do get 2013 Michigan in there that made the title game. But I do think that's like the extreme upper end of what's capable.
Actually, do you mind if I hog it and go my next number? Because I think it relates to what we were just talking about. Hog it. Arkansas. The Hogs. Call the Hogs. The number is 99.7, and that is Florida's defensive rating in conference per KenPom. They are the only SEC team under 108 per 100 possessions in league play. This is the second most efficient conference in the entire country, behind only the defense optional A-Sun. as the lowest turnover rate and the second highest offensive rebound rate. So it's just kind of an efficiency explosion every time these SEC teams get on the floor. And I am curious, Will, if that means Florida is actually just winning a league by being the only good defensive team, or are they actually a top 2 or 3 team, as some of the Bart Torvik numbers indicate since January 1st. I'm kind of struggling to decide that. Like, nobody else in this league defends, so playing Florida is like a complete anomaly.
I think they're one of the 5 best teams in the sport, but I do agree that they are taking advantage a bit of, as I mentioned, one of the least physical versions of the SEC defensively I can remember. And that's
Yep,
not
that's
to
why I
say
wanted
that
to. That's why I wanted to
yeah,
run it on and go, because I love that you said that.
it's not. I'm not saying that this is a bad league by any stretch. I do think it's a tad off of. It's certainly a tad off of last year, especially at the top. But I do think, like, one, there's no real nights off in this league. Like, when your 2-12 team in conference play is 53rd at Ken Palm, it's still a pretty damn good conference. But I do think it's notable that, like, the worst offense in the league, South Carolina, is over 104 points per 100 possessions in conference play. That's kind of telling. So I do think, like, Florida's the only team in this league, to my eyes, that can legitimately protect the rim, like, consistently. And I think that's a function of their size, a function of how well they protect the defensive boards. Like, Tennessee is really the only team that can compare to them from a rebounding perspective. And I don't think Tennessee's as good at rim protection or interior offensively as Florida can be. I don't know. I'm really curious about them in March, because I will say this. In the past, I've made big stinks about fading teams that go on really hot runs in conference play in March, because I think they get too much public love. But this time it does feel different, because Florida's, like, formula to get that is not driven by shooting. This is still the 12th best 3-point shooting offense in conference play, 12th best from free throws too. So I would not say that this is, like, ever going to be a great shooting team. It's just that they're so dominant two-way on the interior. They're so good at rebounding. They even have a plus turnover margin now. So I don't know. That's a real cop out of an answer, but they are truly unlike any SEC champion I can remember in recent memory.
Yeah, it's a strange team. Like, they kind of dominate with shot volume, and sometimes those teams, I think, have a lower floor in a 1-game sample, because they're not. I don't know. They're prone to being outshot. But Florida is, at least, like you said, they're up to 34% in from 3 over. Sorry, what's my sample in February? And no wonder they're number 2 in the country in February. Like, when they make an acceptable number of shots, not a lot of shots, acceptable, they are a truly elite team. I think. Do you think they could get up to the last number 1? I know we talked about their 20% or so, but they probably have to win out, I would think.
Mm-hmm. They would have to win out, win the SEC tournament, and probably get some help. Like, UConn would have to lose to St. John's, I think, would be first and foremost on that list.
Yep.
Just because, like, even if they win out, I think their wins above bubble, the last time I looked at Torvik, would crest at about, like, 7th or 8th in the country. And given what we heard about from the selection committee, that probably means they're a 2 seed, which is still amazing. Like, that's great. But, like, even right now, their wins above bubble, I think, is in the mid-teens, kind of closer to, like, a 3 or a 4 seed. So if you marry that with the efficiency numbers, they're probably going to end up a 2 or a 3, which I think is fine. Going to give you some great bracket value, as I might remind. But I do think, because as I run the numbers here at Ken Palm really quick, they have a 39% chance of going 4-0 to finish the season. So slightly more likely than not, they'll drop one. And to be fair, I don't think playing at Texas is nearly as easy as people would indicate. Like, that's the team that smoked Vandy early this season and has beaten Alabama on the road. I don't think Texas is bad. And road rup, for all of Kentucky's faults and qualms this year, that is still a difficult game.
Yep. Yeah,
maybe
I'm
I'm
sure.
coping. Maybe I'm coping because my idiot team got swept by them. But look, it's still tough. It's still
I'm
real
sure
to me, damn it.
Kentucky fans are like, we lost at home to Georgia and Mizzou. Come on. Rupp's not that impenetrable, but, apparently.
Yeah, I'm Mark Cope right now.
There you go. There you go. Has Rick Barnes cried at a presser? That's what you need to bring. You need one of
Yeah,
those.
well, I think Rick he's too stoic. He's too old. I think once you crest like a certain age, you're above crying at a press conference. Like I could never imagine Izzo or Leonard Hamilton doing it, save for like
Yeah.
the retirement presser.
Yep. Okay. I will cede the floor back to you after hogging the mic. So your number 5 stat.
Okay, good. I couldn't remember what number I was on, so I'm glad you brought it up. We're gonna stay in the SEC, and people are gonna, point the gun at me and say stop. But it's time to talk about Tennessee because I think they might be good. And this comes with I people know I hate the sample size thing, but this one does have an actual statistical reason. Tennessee moved JP Estrella to the starting lineup after the we'll politely call it home implosion to Kentucky in mid-January. Since that day, 8-1, 11th nationally at Torvik, and most importantly, plus 23 per 100 on the boards in that span of time. Easily number one in the country by a mile. Now, Estrella's missed the last 2 games with some foot soreness. And Tennessee's still been fine on the boards. They've gotten some really good contributions from Felix Akpara, even like some really good ones from this freshman, Dwayne Brown, which I would advise Tennessee start gathering NIL right now for Dwayne Brown, lest you lose the next Tobe Awaka.
Yep.
With him in the court this year, Tennessee's plus 22.8 per 100 on the boards, plus 8 from 2-point land, which when he's off the court falls to plus 1.
Is that Estrella or Brown?
Estrella, sorry.
Okay. Yep.
Adjusted for opponent quality with Estrella, plus 41.6 per 100. That last one has a lot of 3-point luck involved, but even scaled down and adjusted for sample size, Tennessee goes from playing like a low-end top 20 team without Estrella to top 8 with him. And there's one specific user who I won't name who's a really nice guy that tags me every time that JP Estrella fucks up on the defensive end. Which does happen. JP Estrella is not the greatest defender in world history. But, in conference play, 5th in offensive rebounding rate, 63% from 2 on the year, 127 offensive rating on a 23% usage. His last 4 games that he's played, 16, 12, 11, and 12, to go with, in 3 of those 4 games, 6 or more offensive rebounds. The guy is clearly really valuable and important to Tennessee's bottom line. And so I think it's going to matter a lot to what they're capable of going forward, starting with, as we record, tonight's game against Mizzou. If Tennessee wins out, and they are favored in their final 4 games, probably a 3 seed at 24-7, 14-4. I would say if they just go 3-1, probably a 4. But this is continuing in our trend of teams that, for one reason or another, could provide you some plus bracket value by way of achieving what they do in maybe not boring fashion, but not like points fashion either.
Yeah, it's a bludgeoning fashion. It's a physical overwhelming. Yes, exactly. And you still get some fun with them, with Gillespie and Ament, 2 like big time scorers. But yeah, Estrella, my memory of him is the 15 minutes against Zach Edey back in the 2024 tournament when they're like, we need size and fouls. And he went out there and did a little bit of that. That was like the most minutes he'd played all season. He'd only hit double-digit minutes one other time, but he's now come around, as you mentioned, and developed into a real valuable piece for a team that could be a 3 seed.
Yeah, I like them more than I thought I would. This Tennessee team appeared to be somewhat of a lost cause in mid-January and has actually rounded into form quite well. 4 quad 1 wins since that first Kentucky loss, which is nice to see. The Vandy win on the road happened for a few different reasons. I think Vandy had some unfortunate stuff come about with like Duke Miles clearly to me didn't appear 100%. Tyler Tanner was battling the flu is what Mark Byington talked about in the post-game presser. But I'm going to note this because I have not seen Vandy do this all season long. 8.9 feet average 2-point attempt distance, 3rd percentile, shockingly deep for Vanderbilt. And I thought that was really key from Tennessee. They won that game on the defensive end, dominated Vandy on the boards, which, to be honest, has not been the hardest thing to do against Vandy this year. And with their three of their 4 remaining opponents are among the bottom 4 in conference play in offensive rebounding. Bama, South Carolina, Vandy. Mizzou is the only team with a positive rebounding margin left on the schedule. So there's a real chance they could kind of run up the score on the boards. And I don't know. I look at them as like, when I talked with Miyakawa yesterday in his pod, he pointed out San Diego State as a combination, like a comp, like peak San Diego State, the 4 and 5 seeds. And I'm starting to kind of like that. Maybe Tennessee's redneck, non-woke San Diego State. I don't know.
there's a characterization. Wear that one proudly, Rocky
Cash
Top
Patel,
Nation.
Tennessee.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, I mean, I'm buying them, and plus you've got the Vols were the first hero to beat Alabama with Charles Bediako, so that's a proud badge for the Vols to wear.
It's a shame that our win won't count, but it's okay.
Yeah, exactly. That was not the version of Alabama that will play in the tournament. So, okay, let's keep it with you. If you want to go to your sixth stat, we can go back to that form.
All right, we're going to escape the SEC now, I promise. So we've referenced in the past John Gasaway's shot volume index, which, to sum up more or less, is the number of shot attempts per 100 sans foul attempts that a team generates on an average night. There are 31 through 4 seeds, and this is like, I'm doing offense minus defense, total shot volume index of plus 10 or greater on a season-long basis. 31 through 4 seeds in the last 24 years of my database have done this. 23 of those 30 went to at least the Sweet 16. We have 3 of those teams likely to get a 4 seed or higher this year. Can you guess who they might be?
Oh, God. No, I don't know.
Okay, one of them lost last night.
Houston.
Okay. The other 2, Iowa State and Gonzaga.
Ooh, okay, this is good. I have a stat on Iowa State that I'm excited to talk about. So
perfect. I think that 3 of these 3 teams are starting to lose luster in the public eye by way of recent results. Gonzaga's recent results are more just like they play in the West Coast Conference. They don't really play anybody unless it's time to play St. Mary's or Santa Clara. So,
and their last storyline was losing to Portland.
Yeah, like, and while to me it was important they beat Santa Clara on the road, to the average person nobody cares. So they're like, they have one important game left and it's Saturday. So Gonzaga's kind of out of the public eye. Iowa State losing to Saunders-less BYU and to TCU in the recent weeks, like, people are starting to fade them a little bit, and there are some mild concerns for me about like what happens in games where they don't force turnovers. But even so, like, that's still a team that produces great shot volume, and the same goes for Houston, who's now lost 3 in a row. I advise them to keep doing this because they are going to somehow, as a 2 seed or even 3 that made the title game last year, provide plus bracket value if they keep losing games, because still a consensus top 6 team, still gets back a lot of extra possessions. I think second best in the entire country in turnover margin behind McNeese. So I'm just not quitting on these 3 teams that are going to have lots of paths to victory if they don't make shots in March.
Yeah, I think Houston's getting a lot of razzing or shade right now because they've lost somebody like their 5 most important games, like home versus Arizona, Tennessee in a neutral, and then 3 very tough road games in the Big 12. But the one thing I remember seeing in the past couple of years is that in Evan Mia's team ratings, he's got like the opponent adjustment where they play better versus worse teams or better versus better teams. Houston's not like an egregious violator of that, where they've only run up the score against bad teams and they haven't been in the game with their best opponents. Last night against Kansas, or Monday night against Kansas, for whenever people are listening to this, was the first time they kind of like felt truly outclassed. Like the second half, they looked bad. Like down the stretch, they kind of couldn't do anything offensively. They got down 20 in that game. But I'm also not overly worried about them. I definitely don't think they're getting upset. Like I don't think a lesser team, a mid-major team, is going to take them down in the first or second round. Can they access a higher ceiling offensively and get somewhat better shots, maybe get to the line a little bit instead of living on that mid-range diet? We'll see. Gonzaga, we kind of touched on. Now Iowa State, I'll just hit you back with my number on them because it's almost conflicting in a sense. 23rd is my number, and that's Iowa State's ranking in Q1 only games per Bart Torvik. And I just thought that was like kind of a jarring number for a team that was a 1 seed in the committee reveal. They're 6-4 in those Q1 games. Nothing to be ashamed about there. But they're underwater on 2-point percentage. They're 48% on offense, 50% on defense, and only 50th in forced turnover rate. So to your point, Will, they have struggled in those specific Q1 games to actually turn teams over. And that surprised me a little bit because Lipsy and Toure are such monsters on the ball. Jefferson's a great defender with some good hands, versatile off the ball. I especially, they were able to take down Houston and they didn't turn it over at all in that game, but they've also got to force turnovers. And whether they can do that against the highest caliber of competition, that's the question. Now, that doesn't matter for rounds 1 and 2 and making the Sweet 16, but can they do it as the tournament progresses? That's the question.
Yeah, like I do worry about them scaling up a bit. I don't worry as much about Houston or Gonzaga. I think they've just got a little more talent. But it will help Iowa State to just have a better offense this year. I don't think like defensively they're nearly as elite as they were like 2 years ago, for example. But they feel more well-rounded. I don't know. When I look at these three teams, I think whatever their seed line is, they're winning that number of games at least. Like if Gonzaga's a 3, they're going to make the Sweet 16. If Iowa State's a 3, they're going to make the Sweet 16. Houston, probably Elite 8. So these are teams that like people are going to start fading because they've lost a few games in a row. But I don't know. Like I mean, take a look at some of last year's teams. Like Auburn lost 3 of 4 to end the season, made the Final Four. Tennessee lost 3 in a row in 2024, made the Elite 8. We have these teams every year who have like bad 3 or 4 game stretches. And we start getting, little nuggets of information out from like Twitter people who are like, oh, they're having a players only meeting or whatever. And all it is just like they had bad shooting variance for 3 games. So I don't know. I'm not going to quit these teams just yet. They've got flaws. I don't think that any of them are going to win the title necessarily. But if one of these 3 makes the Final Four, I'm not going to be surprised whatsoever.
Yeah, this isn't the same build of a team with like the turnover rate stat you're talking about. But remember when 2024 or 2023 UConn lost 6 of 8 in the Big East, and then they won every game by double figures in the NCAA tournament, just steamrolled teams. I think they covered the spread in every non-conference game that year, both non-con and NCAA tournament. So yeah, sometimes league play, it just can kind of throw a wrench. You're more familiar with the teams, they're more familiar with you, and the game's bogged down a little bit. So I wouldn't like fully overread into any losing streaks in league play, as Will's mentioning here.
Do people forget that Michigan State lost at home to Mike Woodson last year?
I do. I forgot that.
And then they made the Elite 8 with like not that much of a sweat.
Yeah, they absolutely steamrolled their way through that. I guess Mississippi was tough, but yeah. All right, final statistical nuggets here because I did get my Iowa State one out there. So to you, Will, for number 7.
We're talking about a lot of tournament stuff just because the next time we record it will be March. There will be conference tournaments starting up, and we will have some different and more interesting stuff to preview as it leans forward. And so I wanted to bring this one up. This is since conference play began, because last year, the big storyline for me was there were no mid-majors in the Sweet 16. It was the first time ever. There are 6 that rank inside the top 40 nationally since conference play began. Some of these won't be surprising and some of them will. But in order, it's Utah State, St. Louis, Santa Clara, St. Mary's, San Diego State, and New Mexico. Only 4 of these were also top 50 in non-conference play: Utah State, St. Louis, Santa Clara, and St. Mary's. I feel that those are your 4 best shots at getting it done this year. I think one of those 3 will make the Sweet 16, or one of those 4, sorry. And, it's not a guarantee all 6 of those teams make it. Like San Diego State took a blowtorch to their resume last week.
Yes.
Not really sure what that was all about. I didn't appreciate it. I don't think you should have done that. But like New Mexico, 41st in wins above bubble. St. Mary's, 24th, very quietly in wins above bubble. They have a much better resume than I think people realize. Santa Clara up to 37th, which is nice to see. All of these teams, like somebody, I think just by pure number of chances, has to get it done this year. And it's going to benefit this season that we have more teams from the mid-major ranks that are going to wear home uniforms in the round of 64. We're just going to have a better shot. And I've done some stuff at Basket Review showing like there is a greater number of, just pure teams that are, going to have a chance in the round of 32 this year just because the field is not as heavily split from like the top 10 versus everyone else. I think that the gaps are a little smaller, and we're gonna have a bet. Like I think we're gonna have to sacrifice the round of 64 this year. Just accept it's probably not going to be very exciting, but the round of 32 and onward should be providing us some pretty good stuff. And I just think, and like if you want to toss Miami of Ohio in there, feel free. But statistically, they don't really meet what we're looking for. I think it's going to be one of those four. SLU, Utah State, Santa Clara, St. Mary's that can get it done.
Part of what I love about this is that most of these teams are super fun. Like Santa Clara, St. Louis, Utah State are a blast to watch. St. Mary's maybe a little more for the discerning basketball eye. It's a little bit slower and a little more defensive minded there. But even, if we're inserting Miami of Ohio, their offense is beautiful. The ball just pings around. I'm sure most people are familiar with them that listen to this show by this point. But it's gorgeous basketball. I don't know if a team like Belmont can make it happen. They also have a very, very fun offense that can score in bunches. So I would hope that we're able to see a round of 32 team break through to the Sweet 16. I also fear for the first round, and perhaps, I don't know, it will probably depend a lot on who wins conference tournaments at the mid-major level, if we do get the very best teams or not to make the field in like the 12 and 13 seed range. But even if not, we do have a couple of teams we can believe in the mid-major level that can make a Sweet 16.
I'm going to note really quick, selection committee, it's 2026. We can find out where you live. Do not pull some shit like pairing Santa Clara with St. Louis or Utah State in the round of 64. Do not do it.
Please don't. Yeah. Okay, there's your 8-9 seed game, and you have to lose to Duke in round 2. Like, come on. Let's be better than
do
that.
it.
Yep. Just give us the mid-major versus middling Power 5.
Parody and satire on the threat front. That's all fake. But it's also real. Don't do it.
No, we're going to clip out that clarification. We're not going to include that. Sorry, Will. You're in trouble. Okay. My last thought is a quick one. It's a comedic one. It's just I had to highlight this game. 30.9% is the number, and that was the effective field goal percentage for both Georgetown and Seton Hall this weekend. A 51-47 Seton Hall win. It's the only game this season where both teams were sub 31% in effective field goal percentage. It was hideous. It was disgusting. I did not actually watch it, and I'm glad I didn't. Seton Hall went 0 for 18 from 3 and won. And this is also somehow not Georgetown's worst offensive performance of the year. That would be the at DePaul debacle, where they were 12 for 53 from the field, and I think made one field goal the entire second half. It's wild that team has been in two absolutely disgusting offensive performances, because I think there's a little more talent there, especially offensively, than this. But I was just appalled and shocked by this box score, so I had to present it and let the people know that this ugly game did happen on Saturday.
I think it would be fair to ban Seton Hall from the tournament.
Yeah.
Look, I'm sorry. Shea is a great and likable guy. I don't want this team in the tournament. I would be a bad viewing experience. It would be like if we had do you remember that first Mississippi State Chris Jan's team that was dead last in the country in 3-point percentage?
They made the first four, right?
Yeah, and they lost to Pittsburgh, and it was great because if I had to watch that slop Iowa State team play Mississippi State, I think I would have just gone to eat or something.
Yep. I have such a weird distinct memory of Mississippi State making their first 2 or 3 threes in that first 4 game. It was like, yes. I have never seen more fool's gold in the history of the sport. I did. Seton Hall making the first 4 would be like when Virginia snuck in, was it 2 years ago, and played that hideous offensive game against Colorado State. They haven't accumulated the wins, and the offense is so bad that I think we can do okay keeping out Seton Hall.
We also can't let it happen because teams with their profile win in March, pretty consistently.
Yeah,
and I don't want to run the risk. I don't want to run the risk of this being a first aughts team regeneration, where that team was god awful offensively, and because they got placed in the perfect pod for them, made the Sweet 16. I don't want that.
No,
it'd be great for Holloway, great for Seton Hall, not great for my eyes.
I would pass on that as well. So we'll let Holloway's run at St. Peter's be his lasting March legacy until he figures out offense. All right, that's it. I believe that is all of our thoughts. I had written down apologies to Houston, St. John's, and Cincinnati for not having a thought on them, but thankfully my cohort, Will, had something on all of them. So we were able to touch on those teams. I think they all warranted some chatter this week. But, Will, we got to finish up with Willstradamus. People have got to hear what's happening on the slate this week. We've got a big one, the Stats Bowl, Tennessee at Missouri tonight. So we got to hear what's going to happen in that one. In addition, Miami of Ohio's on the road. NC State, Virginia is a big one in the ACC. Auburn at Oklahoma, if you feel like predicting Auburn's 13th loss. What do you got for us?
I'm going to say that Tennessee probably escapes Missouri on the road. It feels like it's not going to be very fun, and it's going to be controversial, regardless of who wins. I think it's going to be an extremely close game. I will guess Tennessee by 2 points.
Can I predict something or forecast something from that? You mentioned that
Jim
Missouri's
here.
Yeah, Missouri's the only team on Tennessee's remaining slate that has a positive rebound margin, I believe you said. Mm-hmm. I'm going to say Tennessee out-rebounds Missouri by at least 15, and 20 feels more likely.
Oh, well, that would make me feel happy. Not you. That's not the point. It would make me feel happy. I am going to pull a weird lever here, pull the upset lever, and just by pure way of like eventually it's going to happen, I'm going to say NC State beats UVA on the road. I've been waiting for a bit for Virginia to crack. I think we mentioned them 2 weeks ago. We effed up. This is a clear, like, if you're listening to this the day after Virginia probably won by 17 and we look like idiots, or at least I look like an idiot. But I think NC State's going to pull off a shocker. I'm going to go with Baylor not winning, but losing a close one at home to Arizona. I think that's got a weird feel to me of like, for some reason, that's like an Arizona 5-point road win. And whether it's like a letdown after the huge road win on the or like some sort of shooting variance thing, whatever it might be, I feel like Baylor's going to keep that close.
Yeah, Arizona might be down to 5 real rotation players because Pete's questionable, Del Orso I think is questionable, and Aristode's out. So yeah, that one is risky.
All right, what are other big games? This is like
it's not a huge top end slate. If you got a USC UCLA prediction, does Kentucky get off the
prediction? I'm going to not watch it. That's not for me.
No.
Kentucky's
lost 3 in a row. They beat South Carolina, right?
Yeah, they're going to beat South Carolina. I will say Nevada beats New Mexico at home, which is not good for bubble results. So I'm just going to assume that happens and hope to be wrong otherwise. I think Florida State's going to beat and sweep Miami at home, which is going to be interesting for Miami. I think they're going to be okay wins-wise for the bubble, but could be really interesting.
You don't want the sweep to the Knolls being the top part of your resume.
2 more bonus ones. I'll go Texas Tech to get it done at home over Cincy by 9. And I'm going to say SLU wins by, we'll say by 3 possessions at Dayton.
Oh, I like it. Okay. Coming off their big win against VCU.
The Arch Baron Cup, is that what it is?
Oh, yeah. Huge rivalry there.
Yeah.
Wait, we got to get your season-long or season team draft squad, Miami of Ohio. Do they stay undefeated at Eastern Michigan?
Yes, I actually like Miami of Ohio plenty at Eastern Michigan. I mentioned this in the watch list. They have had a weird thing for reasons that I can't find rhythm or like an explanation for with Western Michigan, who they play Friday. They've lost twice on the road as heavy favorites to them in previous seasons. And this Western team sucks and is bad, but statistically speaking, it is still slightly more likely than not, I think 60-40, that Miami drops one before the end of the regular season. And for whatever reason, Western has been a real bugaboo for them in previous years. So I would say in the battle of directional Michigans, I would say Western is more likely to do it than Eastern.
Okay. You heard it here first, folks. There it is. Miami's going to be fine on Tuesday, but keep an eye out for them on Friday. That is it for us here at Stats by Will and Jim. Will, any other parting thoughts before sending the people on their way?
Thanks for reading. Thanks for watching, listening, all the reviews. I'll even thank the person who told me to stick to sports in the YouTube comments like 3 weeks ago. Thank you for listening. You made it the whole way through, and then you dipped out on that. So, hey, thanks for the view. But no, I appreciate all it's been an amazing first season, really, for Under the Basket Review umbrella. And the next time we speak, it's going to be March, and we'll see. We'll see who of the two of us is awake for the John Rothstein tweet.
Oh God, yeah. Does he
Not
do
me.
a 20,
Won't be me.
24-hour countdown to like 23 hours until March? I think he usually schedules those too. So
Yeah.
wonderful. We'll be really looking forward to that. But hey, thank you. Yes, as Will said, everybody, thank you for tuning in. Thank you to Trilly Donovan, our overlord at Basket Under Review, for the opportunity to do the show here and to write some under that umbrella. Thank you to Corey Aldis, our producer behind the scenes, Sam Frayer for our graphics, and Home Field Apparel for the sponsorship. That's it for us this week, folks. We'll catch you again in March.